In my past life, the emperor deposed me as empress for his beloved, forcing me to leap from the city wall to a tragic death. Yet that twisted eunuch clutched my corpse, weeping until he vomited blood, his hair turning white overnight. He repelled enemy forces in my stead, slew the emperor, and installed a new sovereign. Finally, at my grave, he bled dry and took his own life. Lord Liu, do you realize that even in death, you'll bear the stain of regicide, your name cursed for eternity? I only sought to grant her soul peace. When I opened my eyes again, I had been reborn back to the year I came of age. He was delivering an imperial edict, commanding me to enter the palace and be crowned empress on a chosen day. I tossed the decree aside and pressed my lips to his. What good is being empress? Wouldn't you rather take me as your own? After a rebirth, I returned to the year when Lord Liu Yuesheng first came to my estate to deliver the imperial decree. That day, drunk, I had fallen asleep on a recliner in the courtyard. When I opened my eyes again, I saw the sun, just about to set, and standing in the light and shadow, wearing a crimson python skin robe, was him. This rumored, sinister and twisted grand eunuch, the 9,000 years, stood quietly by my side. A thin blanket was already draped over me. Everyone said he was ruthless and cruel. Every day, in the Eastern Factory's imperial prison, he wasn't gouging out hearts or ripping out eyes. He wasn't slicing flesh or stripping bones. Yet this very madman feared I might feel cold in my sleep. Liu Yuesheng. I called his name. He froze, taking a stiff half-step back. Just moments ago, while I slept, he had gazed at me with unrestrained, undisguised longing and desire. But upon realizing I was awake, he instantly resumed his usual cold, inhuman, grim expression. I immediately grabbed his sleeve. Don't move. Let me see. His entire body froze. His expression taut. Yet he truly held still. What is there to see? I rose slowly, raising my hand to touch the delicate flesh at his neck. The skin was pale and flawless, and no longer drained of blood, lifeless and hollow. This year, he was still alive, occupying a high position, safe and sound. But the next moment, my hand was gently grasped by Liu Yuesheng. This servant is a filthy eunuch, unworthy of the young lady's noble fingers. Even if you wish to strangle me, there's no need to soil yourself, just a touch. And he claims I meant to strangle him. His tongue, when venomous, truly chokes. One. Blame it on his position. He is the chief eunuch of the Eastern Factory. I once believed the rumors, not only giving him a cold shoulder but also cursing him as a deceitful, power-hungry man who would be killed sooner or later. And yet, those very words reached his ears. Yet this very man, cold and sharp-tongued on the surface, his hands stained with blood, secretly shielded me at every turn. Recalling how he clutched my corpse after my death in my past life, his grief so deep it made him vomit blood. A lump rose in my throat. Unaware of my thoughts, Liu Yuesheng maintained his stern facade, his voice icy and detached. Miss Lingling, if you've sobered up, hear the imperial decree. I smiled at him. Yes, read it. It suited me well. I wanted to hear his voice more. The incense altar was set, and Liu Yuesheng's thin lips parted, delivering the decree without emotion. The decree was vague, merely instructing me to enter the palace to learn court etiquette, yet anyone could see it was preparation for crowning me Empress. I lifted my gaze to Liu Yuesheng, deliberately probing. Superintendent Liu, do you wish for me to enter the palace? He lowered his eyes. Patchy tree shadows filtered through the window lattice, falling upon him. His voice was cool and distant, like a dream soaring to the heights. That is what the world desires. I tossed the imperial decree aside casually, flashed a smile, and leaned close to his ear. Is becoming empress truly soaring to the heights? But I'd rather be the governor's wife. Why not take me as your own? His gaze flickered violently. Yet in an instant, it returned to calm. His voice, slightly hoarse, asked, Miss Lingling, does teasing your servant bring you such joy? I smiled, growing bolder, and reached toward his Adam's apple. Liu Yuesheng, you've committed treason. Eunuchs, castrated from childhood, rarely possess Adam's apples. Liu Yuesheng was different. As my fingertip brushed against it, his Adam's apple pulsed faintly, An irresistible temptation. Uncharacteristically, he abandoned his feigned humility, tilting his head slightly to glance at me askance. My family faced calamity. I entered the palace at 15 to serve, hence retaining my Adam's apple. I would never dare commit the crime of deceiving the emperor. I scoffed. Dare not deceive the emperor? Ha! What nonsense. He dared to kill the emperor himself. In my past life, I entered the palace as empress, only to be killed by that stupid emperor, Li Huaijin. After my death, a figure clad in purple robes and a golden sash stormed the palace with a sword, severing the reigning emperor's head. He then hacked the emperor's bloody corpse to pieces, tossing the remains to wild dogs. Who else could it be but Liu Yuesheng? Though I had other plans, I couldn't defy the imperial decree outright. So I entered the palace as agreed. After paying respects to the Empress Dowager and the eldest princess, the princess summoned a group of handsome, clever young eunuchs. Lin Ling, choose whichever you fancy and take him to serve you. But my eyes were fixed firmly on Liu Yuesheng, standing beside the princess. In my past life, he schemed endlessly just to come to my side. This time, he needn't trouble himself, I would claim him myself. I hear Inspector Liu excels at archery. Might your highness grant me a few days of his instruction? The princess pondered briefly before instructing Liu Yuesheng. Handle matters at the Eastern factory yourself. Set aside 2 hours daily to teach Ling Lang. Liu Yuesheng lowered his gaze, yes. From that day onward, Liu Yuesheng began reporting for duty at my quarters. I practiced archery for only half an hour each day. The rest of the time, I read while he served tea. I practiced calligraphy while he ground ink. I painted while he handed me paper. I'd heard the emperor favored gentle women, especially those skilled in painting and calligraphy. As I sketched and painted, I deliberately asked Liu Yuesheng, Superintendent, do you think His Majesty would like my paintings? His expression was anything but pleasant. Hardly surprising. After all, everyone now assumed my painting efforts were meant to win the emperor's favor. Liu Yuesheng looked as if he'd been soaked in a vinegar vat, even standing there. He radiated jealousy, and he thought he was hiding it well. Seeing his silence, I continued, half playfully reproachful, half testing. Superintendent Liu, say something. Why so quiet? You're as silent as a log. His face remained taut, his tone laced with sarcasm. Didn't Miss Ling Ling always call the servant mad? Fearing my wild words might frighten you. So sarcastic. So sour. I almost laughed. Never mind. The trap isn't set yet. Let him stew in his jealousy for now. Just like in my previous life. Spurred by the Empress Dowager's urgency, I hadn't been in the palace long when the newly enthroned emperor, Li Huaijin, came personally. That day, Liu Yuesheng was absent, and I was practicing archery alone. A dozen wooden feathered arrows were stuck in the target, each hitting the bullseye. Li Huaijin frowned. He'd never approved of women wielding weapons. Sure enough, moments later, he approached with a smile and tossed aside my bow and arrows. Lin Ling, why practice such dangerous things now that you're in the palace? It's too perilous, don't hurt yourself. I admired his feigned tenderness, then glanced at the woman behind him. Xin Qingqing, Li Huaijin's eternal love. The late emperors will decree that whichever prince ascended the throne, I must become empress. For the Liang dynasty's realm was secured by my father and brothers. After my parents and elder brother perished in the northern frontier, I became the sole surviving heir of the Xie family. For the new emperor to seize military control, crowning me empress was the simplest and most popular solution. In my previous life, remembering my father and brother's sacrifice, I couldn't bear court turmoil. I obediently entered the palace and married Li Huaijin. But Li Huaijin truly loved this Xin Qingqing. After exploiting me, He swiftly elevated Shinqingqing to imperial consort. To cling desperately to military authority, he fabricated excuses to suppress my father's former commanders. Uncles and brothers-in-arms who fought their entire lives for the Liang dynasty were falsely accused and demoted. Retiring to farmland was already a luxury. The most tragic met their end through persecution and death. Alas! Li Huijin's capabilities failed to match his ambition. He forgot that while military power may be held, capable generals are hard to find. When war erupted, the trusted generals he dispatched proved to be all show and no substance. The enemy forces swept southward, and the great Liang dynasty lost 10 cities in succession. Worse still, assassins infiltrated the inner palace, abducting both me and Shinqingqing. Later, Li Huijin sacrificed 6 counties to secure Shinqingqing's release. Yet he handed me, his own empress, over to the enemy. In despair, I demanded to know why he had gone this far. He pinched my cheek, his smile as poisonous as venom. Xia Linlang, blame yourself for usurping Qingqing's position as empress. You poisoned her, causing her to miscarry. You deserve to pay with your life. I found it laughable. He himself had placed me on the empress's throne. As for poisoning, Shinqingqing had slandered me countless times. Li Huijin never cared whether I was wronged, he believed everything she said. Later, the enemy stripped me of my imperial robes. They said they wanted to taste the flavor of the Empress of Daliang. Unwilling to endure the humiliation, I leapt from the city wall, my body shattered to pieces. Now, we meet again across lifetimes. One Li Huijin, one Shinqingqing. I would recognize them even as ashes. The moment Shinqingqing saw me, she slowly knelt, feigning terror. Greetings, Miss Xia. What I detest most is her habit of tearing up at the slightest provocation. I merely called her by name, yet she acted as if I intended to flay her alive. Yet Li Huijin, oddly fond of her, personally reached out to help her up. There, Qingqing, you injured your leg gathering herbs for the emperor. You must rest well. Rise now. Shinqingqing murmured her compliance, burrowing into Li Huijin's embrace as she struggled to stand, feigning the frail, unsteady posture of one barely able to walk. Yet her eyes darted toward me, brimming with smug satisfaction. Back in my past life, when Li Huijin abandoned me for her, she wore the exact same look. After soothing Shinqingqing, Li Huijin turned to me. Lin Lang, have someone collect these weapon targets immediately. They're frightening others. He was upset I'd startled his beloved. I casually shot another arrow and retorted bluntly. Scared? Then don't come. Shinqingqing choked on her words. Li Huijin frowned but persisted in his invitation. Enough. Ling Lang. Let's not speak of this. The lotus flowers in the pond have bloomed. Would you care to see them with me? I scoffed. What's so wonderful about blooming lotus flowers? I only want to see his head bloom. This time, Li Huijin's face turned completely cold. Shinqingqing began to tear up. Miss Xia seems upset. Is it because I disturbed you and His Majesty? If that's the case, it's all my fault. I shouldn't have come to cause trouble. Her eyes were red from crying. However, feigned confusion and asked, if you knew you shouldn't have come, then just leave. Why are you still standing here? Shinqingqing froze for a moment, then, her face turned ashen, biting her lip tightly, she bowed to me and Li Huijin in humiliation before turning and walking away. Qingqing, Li Huijin called after her anxiously, then glared at me. Xia Linlang, how dare you be so arrogant? I pointed at Shinqingqing's retreating figure. A mocking smile playing on my lips. Wasn't she injured? Couldn't even stand. Steady, she sure runs with agility. Li Huijin froze, glancing at Shinqingqing and instantly grasping the truth, yet he still shielded her. Xia Linlang, your words and actions are utterly unbecoming of the Empress. I chuckled. Oh, then who suits you better? Shinqingqing, indeed. A wolf in sheep's clothing, weeping in public, feigning illness. Truly your perfect match. Li Huijian's face flushed crimson with fury. He spat out, if you weren't of the Xia clan, do you think I'd deign to elevate you? Then he swept his sleeves and stormed off. Fu Chun stood beside me, cautiously asking, Miss, are you truly unwilling to marry the emperor? Such defiance has greatly angered the emperor, yet I chuckled softly, so what if he's angry? Those who rage from incompetence always put on such a show. Besides, I did it on purpose. Only when he's consumed by hatred and fury will he act stubbornly and recklessly, beginning to make mistakes. Soon, I heard that to make Qing Empress, Li Huijin caused a scene in the Empress Dowager's chambers. The Empress Dowager scolded him fiercely, unwilling to concede. Li Huijin then stormed into the former court until all officials learned of it and submitted petitions. I was chosen as the imperial bride by the late emperor. Li Huijin's actions were tantamount to defying the late emperor's will, yet he was determined to prop up Qing. Moreover, he believed that as emperor, he could seize military power without needing me. The officials failed to dissuade him, and the Empress Dowager was furious beyond words. I, however, watched quietly from the sidelines. Lately, the imperial court and the harem have been quite lively. I thought no one knew that I had deliberately orchestrated this entire situation. Yet it escaped not the gaze of Lu Yueshing. When he returned, his eyes narrowed in a half-smile. His gaze fixed on me. Miss Lingling truly has a tongue sharp enough to kill. A few words, and she stirred the emperor into such a rage. Clearly, everything that transpired when Li Huijin visited my palace that day had reached his ears. Only Fuchen was by my side, and she would never betray me. That left only one possibility, Li Huijin's personal attendant, who was also one of Lu Yueshing's men. That cunning fox, truly worthy of being the chief eunuch, had spies everywhere. I feigned innocence. Superintendent Liu, you shouldn't speak so carelessly. I entered the palace obediently by imperial decree. The emperor himself has grown weary of me. What can I do? After finishing my superficial evasion, I decisively pulled Lu Yueshing close, brushing my lips against his ear as I whispered softly. Superintendent Liu, how do you find my performance now? Do you like it? Lu Yueshing may seem cold and aloof, but he's utterly helpless against a little teasing. With just a few words from me, his Adam's apple bobbed, his dark eyes fixed on me like hooks. Were it not for the imperial crimson robe and brocade he wore, who could believe he was the grand eunuch? Finding it amusing, I was about to tease him further when he turned his gaze to the painting paper on the desk and suddenly asked, his voice thick with jealousy, if you never wanted to be empress, why paint these to please that man? I'd forgotten about that. Though I'd driven away that dog of an emperor, Li Huijin, I'd continued painting and writing these past days. Those unaware might assume I'm still scheming to win him back. In my past life, striving to be Li Huijin's perfect empress, I studied his tastes and drilled endlessly in calligraphy and painting, hoping to earn his favor. But no matter how hard I practiced, Li Huijin always found fault. He called my writing ugly and my paintings trash. Refusing to accept defeat, I wrote and painted again and again. Finally, he spoke the truth with impatience. Enough, Xia Linlang, your hands are only made for gripping blades. How could they ever grasp the finest brushstrokes? Not only is it laughable, but you're wasting that precious ink. That was when I understood. What Li Huijin truly despised wasn't my calligraphy or paintings. It was these hands of mine, hands that wielded swords and blades, hands calloused from battle. He adored Qingqing's hands. Even if Qingqing drew mandarin ducks that looked like wild ducks, or painted phoenixes that resembled partridges, he'd still find them graceful and charming. Because of this, I once cried myself to sleep for an entire night. Later, I discarded every piece of calligraphy and painting I'd ever created for Li Huijin, but just then, Lu Yueshing, entering the palace, stumbled upon the utter chaos scattered throughout the chambers. Without a word, he picked up each sheet of my discarded drafts from the floor, carefully gathering them. Later, he painstakingly pieced together the paintings I'd torn to shreds, mounting them as if they were priceless treasures. Furious and humiliated, I snapped at him, why would you frame such ugly things? I still remember how Lu Yueshing clutched the scroll, his fingertips turning white, his voice cold and stubborn. They aren't ugly. He was foolish, didn't know how to cherish them, didn't deserve to appreciate them. It was obvious who he referred to. My heart couldn't help but stir, but living in the palace, where one must guard against eavesdroppers at every turn, how could he dare? One careless word could cost him his life. So I coldly snapped at him, "Shut up. What do you know, you eunuch?" I can never forget how his body stiffened after hearing those words. The light in his eyes extinguished. His face ashen. Now, reborn. It feels like a dream from another lifetime. I want to hold on to that light. At this very moment. Lu Yueshing, seeing my silence, his face pale and cold, his eyes slightly dimmed, asked darkly, "Are you still thinking about becoming his empress? Does Miss Xie enjoy toying with people's hearts so much?" I watched with both amusement and heartache, adding the final strokes to the paper. Then I flipped the painting upside down and handed it back to him. "Lu Yueshing, look closely again. Who do you think I've painted?" He stared at the figure in the painting and froze. In just one glance, the icy, dark furrow between his brows instantly smoothed out. Because the one I painted wasn't someone else. It was him. In my past life, I honed my painting skills until I mastered an extraordinary art. I defied convention, painting in reverse. Until the final stroke, no one could discern the true subject of my work. Lu Yueshing was right. That dog Emperor Li Huijin was blind. He didn't know how to cherish, nor did he deserve to appreciate. He wasn't even worth a single finger of Lu Yueshing. Now, gazing at the man before me, I asked with a smile, "Superintendent Lu, do you like my painting of you? If you like it, why not take it back to your residence? Mount it above your bed. Hold it close each night as you sleep. Wouldn't that be lovely?" Even Lu Yueshing, who usually wore a perfect facade, now clutched the painting paper tightly, unwilling to let go. His gaze burned into mine. Saying he liked it wasn't right. Saying he didn't like it was even less so. Finally, he gave up pretending. When he spoke again, his voice was hoarse, each word dripping with desire. "Sleep with it? How could that be enough? You know perfectly well who I truly want to hold." I quietly savored his near madness for me, giggling softly as I nestled into his embrace, almost bewitchingly. "Then hold me." Lu Yueshing's entire body tensed. If this were a play script, he'd be a god descended to earth, while I was the demon who misled his path and lured him into ruin. I tested him bit by bit, crumpled his crimson robe, brushed against his Adam's apple, wrapped my arms around his neck. In my past life, bound by my role as empress, I had always maintained dignity and restraint, even confined to the cold palace. I never once used my charms to entice anyone. As for that dog of an emperor, Li Huijin, he was too busy fawning over Shinqing to ever touch me. Thus, I remained a virgin until my death, utterly devoid of any experience in seducing men. Yet when I met Lu Yueshing's deep gaze, it was as if I'd learned instinctively. I kissed his ascetic, thin lips, teasing him. "Superintendent Lu, I gave you your chance. If you don't hold me now, I'm leaving." I made a move as if I truly intended to leave. Lu Yueshing closed his eyes in agony, then pulled me back into his embrace with a sudden, forceful tug. "Don't you dare leave." His voice was hoarse beyond recognition. No sooner had the words left his lips than he lost control and pressed his lips to mine. Overwhelming, suffocating, like a wolf tasting flesh for the first time. Utterly insatiable. As my body went limp, I murmured to myself, "How could he possibly be a eunuch? He's clearly a demon incarnate." But just then, a shrill voice announced from outside, "His Majesty has arrived." It was Li Huijin. He certainly knew how to ruin the mood. Hearing Li Huijin's footsteps draw nearer, I had to extricate myself from Lu Yueshing's embrace. Panting in short gasps, I frantically adjusted my breathing and smoothed my makeup. My movements slightly flustered. The lingering flush of passion in Lu Yueshing's eyes hadn't fully faded. What? Scared now? As he spoke, he plucked a jade hairpin from my hair. One hand gripped the shaft while the other caressed the carved ornament at its tip. His slender, pale fingers complemented the creamy white jade perfectly. Give it back. I reached out to snatch it, but he swiftly tucked the hairpin into his robe, hiding it close to his chest. Now, if I wanted it back, I'd have to strip off his outer robe. My hand froze midair, caught between action and inaction. Could Lord Liu be planting evidence to later accuse me of disrespecting the Eastern Factory's chief? Liu Yueshing's lips curved into a rare, bewilderingly charming smile. What's this? Miss Linglang dares to kiss but not to own up? He was the one who kissed first. Wasn't he? But before I could say more, the door burst open. Li Huijin stormed in, accompanied by Shin Qingqing. I have private matters to discuss with Linglang. No outsiders are permitted to disturb us. Li Huijin's face darkened as he impatiently waved his hand, signaling Liu Yueshing to leave. But Liu Yueshing stood his ground. His face was as cold as ice, his gaze icy and piercing. I couldn't help but wonder if he was about to chop Li Huijin into pieces the next second. After all, in the previous life, he had done just that. Though Li Huijin was a dog, he still wore the emperor's skin. Even if I wanted to take him down, I couldn't get my hands dirty. So I frantically signaled Liu Yueshing with my eyes. Only then did Liu Yueshing deign to leave. Li Huijin, suspecting nothing, took Shin Qingqing by the hand and approached me the moment Liu Yueshing was gone. His first words were laced with scorn. Xia Linlang, you've won. I couldn't fathom what had gotten into him. He looked down at me with impatience, like a benefactor surveying a lowly beggar. You've coaxed the ministers to plead your case and stirred the common folk to sympathize with you, all to marry this emperor. Isn't it? I can grant you that, provided you publicly declare it your own choice to relinquish the empress's position and yield it to Shin Qingqing. In return, I'll concede and bestow upon you the rank of consort. His foolish words nearly made me laugh out loud in anger. Shin Qingqing as empress, and I as consort? Does he want me to kneel at Shin Qingqing's feet every day to pay my respects? Li Huijin coldly warned. Linlang, we have known each other since childhood. Granting you the title of consort is out of consideration for our past bond, so as not to cause you too much sorrow. Do not push your luck or become insatiable. Shin Qingqing stepped forward, eyes reddened, adopting a look of resigned sacrifice. Miss Xia, I know your heart belongs to Ajin, but Ajin is the emperor. He refuses to be bound by a posthumous decree. He wishes only to marry the woman he truly loves as empress. Could you please stop pressuring Ajin? Ah, Jean this. Ah, Jean that. It makes me sick to hear it. I lifted my eyes to look at the two of them, curling my lip in disdain. Not necessary. Since His Majesty favors Miss Shin, this humble servant shall not intrude upon the spectacle. Li Huijin's face darkened with anger. When he spoke again, his words carried a threat. Xia Linlang, I know you're heartbroken, but your persistence is futile. I do not love you. Becoming a consort in the palace is your final option. Should I reject your betrothal? No man in this realm will dare take you as his bride. You'll be forced to shave your head as a nun or waste away in seclusion. I stared at him for a long moment before finally letting out a derisive snort. Oh, then this humble maiden would rather waste away in seclusion. He still hasn't grasped it. It's not that he doesn't want me. It's that I no longer want him. Li Huijin and I parted on bad terms once more. I must admit, while he lacks the skill to govern, he's full of petty schemes. He deliberately brought Shin Qingqing to provoke me, then declared after leaving that he'd relented, promoting me to consort and seeking reconciliation. Refusing now would make me ungrateful. Alas! His calculations were wrong again, because during these days when he was butting heads with his ministers over making Shin Qingqing empress, 3 counties 100 miles from the capital were struck by the dreaded Earth Dragon's upheaval. After the quake, mountains split and rivers cracked. Corpses littered the land. So all of Great Liang learned, Li Huaijin, in his quest to make Shinqingqing empress, had alienated his ministers and hadn't attended court for days. By the time Li Huaijin learned of the disaster and sought to intervene, all he could do was open the granaries to distribute grain. Having ascended the throne only recently, he lacked public support. Now, he faced the consequence of the people turning away from him. Shinqingqing fared no better. Born into the lowly medical family of a minor court physician, she possessed neither power nor influence. Her sole reliance was Li Huaijin's partial favor. Since no one dared curse the emperor, all the blame fell upon Shinqingqing. She became branded as a demoness who seduced the emperor and disrupted the state. Amidst this uproar, however, one person was showered with praise by the people. That person was the eldest princess, Li Ningyu. As if foreseeing the impending disaster, she had dispatched officials early on to evacuate the populace, settle displaced people, and establish relief kitchens. This minimized casualties to the greatest extent possible. While grinding ink, Fuchen asked me in puzzlement, "Miss, how could the eldest princess, she's no divine being, possibly know that a dragon disaster would strike the south? I heard she made exceptionally thorough preparations in advance, saving countless lives." I merely smiled without reply. The princess naturally could not foresee natural or man-made disasters. Therefore, I secretly informed her. At dusk, the princess sent word. She summoned me for a private discussion. When I arrived, Lu Yueshing was also present, seated upon her high dais. The princess radiated an innate aura of authority. She cut straight to the point. "Half a month ago, you had Lu Yueshing deliver a secret letter to this palace. You warned that the 3 southern counties would face the calamity of Earth Dragons rising, urging this palace to prepare early and aid the victims. It seems you were indeed correct." I lowered my gaze. "Yes." She propped her chin lazily on her hand. "Had I not trusted you then, and failed to deploy disaster relief measures in advance, what would you have done?" I replied softly. "I believe that with the lives of the 3 counties' people at stake, even if your highness did not trust me, you would still have made preparations beforehand, just in case." This was the difference between the princess and Li Huaijin. Sure enough, she smiled upon hearing this. "You do understand this palace well. Your servant dares not presume." I expected her next question would be how I had foreseen the Earth Dragon's calamity. Yet she did not press further. Instead, her tone grew gentle, as if reminiscing. "Lin Ling, truly, you never wished to be empress, did you?" I pondered how best to respond. After all, the eldest princess was no fool like Li Huaijin. She was skilled in intrigue and adept at politics. Alas, she was born a woman. No matter how much the late emperor favored her, he still passed the throne to Li Huaijin. In my previous life, after Li Huaijin ascended the throne, he faced an assassination attempt. At the critical moment, it was the eldest princess, considering the greater good, who took the blow for him. Yet Li Huaijin showed no gratitude. Instead, while she recovered from her wounds, he ruthlessly crushed her influence, forcing her to relinquish her power to the court. When the Northern Rong invaded Great Liang, Li Huaijin didn't strategize to repel them. He only thought of marrying the eldest princess off to the Northern Rong. But by then, the Northern Rong had already captured several cities. How could they abandon their conquest for a mere peace princess? This lifetime, I wanted to give the princess a push. I wanted her to see Li Huaijin's foolishness. More than anything, I wanted her to cherish the opportunity before her. So, I no longer addressed her as Your Highness. Instead, I called her by a name long forgotten. Sister-in-law Ningyu. The princess's eyes widened in shock as she stared at me. Stunned. In this world, almost no one besides me knew that she and my elder brother, Xia Yunzhou, had once shared a love. Back then, I was still young and would secretly call her sister-in-law Ningyu behind closed doors. She took great pleasure in that name. But a clay pot cannot avoid shattering near the well, a general cannot escape death on the battlefield. Her young General Xia was buried forever beneath the snow-capped mountains of the northern frontier. I lost my brother. She lost her beloved. She fell gravely ill because of it. After recovering, she threw herself wholeheartedly into the affairs of state. From that day on, I held my tongue, never daring to mention my brother to her again. Years passed in the blink of an eye. Your Highness, do you still remember my elder brother? Incense swirled through the grand hall. The eldest princess stroked the string of crystalline jade beads on her wrist, letting out a soft sigh. Those beads were a gift my brother had given her on the day of her coming-of-age ceremony. When she lifted her gaze again, her eyes were tinged with a faint, moist red. What do you think? People always say the dead are gone. But in this palace's heart, he remains forever alive. That is enough. I bowed my head respectfully and knelt in reverence. Linling swears by the names of my elder brother and our clan kin. Li Huijin is unworthy of the throne. His conduct unfit for an emperor. Should military power fall into his hands, the empire shall be trampled. Linling pledges allegiance to a worthy sovereign. I shall dedicate my entire being to aiding your highness in ascending the throne, safeguarding the people of Great Liang. After a long silence, the princess finally spoke. I have long wished to say this world is unjust to women. Though Father's final decree binds your life, if you strive with all your might, you may yet break free from this cage. Moreover, Li Huijin is a blind fool. Bound to him, you will surely suffer torment. You should stand by my side. I lifted my gaze and saw the faint curve of her lips. This time, her smile held no distant formality. It was relief and unmasked ambition. Throughout it all, Lu Yueshing stood silently at the side, expression cool and distant, uttering not a word. As I departed, dusk was closing in. Lu Yueshing escorted me back to the palace grounds, the journey marked by silence. Only after dismissing the other servants did he speak, his voice thin and cold, tinged with self-mockery. Lady Lingling truly leaves no stone unturned. You knew all along that the princess would entrust me with secretly handling the disaster relief. To achieve your ends, you stooped to flattering me, throwing yourself at me, using your body as bait. Truthfully, you needn't have degraded yourself so. Lu Yueshing was too clever, he guessed it right away. But he was wrong about one thing. Though I did use him, whether it was throwing myself at him or using my body as bait, I never once felt degraded. Right now, though, he's jealous and aggrieved. Yet he puts on this aloof act, it's utterly adorable. So I didn't rush to explain. Instead, I teased him with a playful smile. Well then, Lord Lu, if I were to use myself as bait again next time, would you be willing to take the bait? After saying this, I deliberately leaned in close to his lips and gave him a wink. This time, I came within inches of kissing him, just as I had last time. Lu Yueshing stiffened, his voice cold with self-mockery. Trying to deceive me again? I sighed helplessly. Why would I deceive you? Lu Yueshing, I like you. Can't you tell? He faltered, his eyes brimming with emotion. Then, his Adam's apple rolled as he croaked hoarsely. Xia Linlang, my origins are lowly and filthy, far beyond your imagination. If you provoke me again, I truly won't let you off this time. My breath, sweet as orchids, brushed his neck as I whispered each word. Is that so? Then you must. Absolutely must. not let me off. After my death in the previous life, my soul did not vanish immediately. Instead, I lingered in the mortal realm, becoming a wandering spirit. Li Huijin never came to claim my body. My corpse was discarded in a wild, unmarked grave. At that time, Lu Yuexing and the princess were both absent from the capital. The princess was personally traveling everywhere, seeking reinforcements. Lu Yuexing had infiltrated Beirong, plotting the assassination of 3 Beirong princes, throwing the Beirong royal family into utter chaos. This gave the great Liang side an opportunity to turn defeat into victory. But the land was vast and the capital in turmoil. Communication cut off. Only upon his return did Lu Yuexing finally learn of my death. His eyes red. He stormed the enemy camp, captured their commander, and flayed him alive before prying the location of my remains from his mouth. By then, my flesh and bones had rotted away. A gruesome sight. Lu Yuexing was always composed, never losing his composure before his subordinates. Yet that day, clutching my bones, his eyes bloodshot, he vomited a mouthful of blood in anguish. His blood stained my skeletal remains. From that moment, I began to hear his inner thoughts. I never imagined that the man who always addressed me coldly as Your Majesty the Empress during my lifetime had hidden me so deeply within his heart. In his mind, he apologized to me over and over. I came too late. After avenging you, I will slit my own throat to join you. Then you may beat me and scold me. Is that all right? His inner voice was tender yet profoundly sorrowful. Later, he personally chose a prime feng shui site for my burial. Some advised him, Minister, the Empress should be buried in the imperial mausoleum. He replied aloud, the Xie family has been disgraced by the Emperor. We have no right to enter the imperial tomb. But in his heart, he thought, Lin Lang, I don't want you to be buried alongside that man. He would defile your path to rebirth. Wait for me. I will soon kill that man. Let him taste the agony of rotting flesh and bones. Devoured by beasts, how does that sound? After burying me, Lu Yuexing fell ill. During his years in the Eastern Factory, everyone cursed him as ruthless and merciless. Yet no one knew. As the imperial court's trusted hound, his work had always been a life-risking mission. The imperial physician said his fresh wounds compounded old injuries, and grief had further weakened his body, causing him to cough up blood incessantly and triggering a heart ailment. He wasted away at a visible pace. Yet in his feverish delirium, he would softly murmur my maiden name. Lin Lang. Lin Lang. I couldn't fathom it. Why would he feel this way about me? Until one day, while he was soaking in his medicinal bath, I saw him remove his outer robe, revealing a dagger concealed beneath his inner garments. The dagger was small, its sheath adorned with exquisite gems. I recognized it instantly. It was my blade, born into a family of martial generals. Though a woman, I trained with swords and blades from childhood. Years ago, my elder brother was ordered to return to the capital to investigate a case of embezzled military funds. The case led to a notorious old eunuch from the previous dynasty, Qin Zhong. I was still young then and once accompanied my brother to the old eunuch's residence. While my brother negotiated with the old eunuch in the front hall, bored, I slipped into the rear courtyard of the Qin residence and stumbled upon a secluded woodshed. Inside lay a youth covered in blood. He appeared 3 or 4 years older than me. Frail and haggard. His body was covered in wounds. Only his face remained relatively intact, though it was filthy and almost unrecognizable. They say the old eunuch Qin, being physically flawed himself, had perverse tastes. He took particular pleasure in collecting fair-skinned, beautiful youths to keep in his mansion, subjecting them to relentless torment day and night. Seeing the look in that boy's eyes, I could guess he must have refused to submit, ending up in this state. Hey, are you okay? He glanced at me once, then turned his head away in embarrassment. In that instant, his eyes went dead, as if he'd long since lost the will to live. Thanks to the travel habits of my military family, I'd grown up carrying some ointment for external injuries, just like my father and brothers. Seeing his pitiful state, I applied some ointment to his wounds. Then I shared with him the peach cake I just bought from Yonghua Alley. He remained motionless, as if quietly awaiting death. So I crouched down and fed him myself, bringing the cake to his lips. This is peach cake from the Chen family shop in Yonghua Alley. I bought it but couldn't bear to eat it myself. I've been keeping it warm in my bosom all this time. If you don't eat it, it'll go to waste. Hey, my arm's getting tired holding this up for you. Do me a favor and just take a bite, okay? He stared at me blankly for a long time. Finally, he took a bite, as if to cooperate. Right then, I thought to myself, he must be a soft-hearted soul. Even though he clearly didn't want to live anymore, he still couldn't bear to see me exhausted. So I kept on chattering away, trying to persuade him. He just listened in silence. Fortunately, after the first bite came the second. In the end, he struggled to swallow the pastries, mixed with the blood from his severe wounds. Seeing his pitiful state, I told him, "Today I can only manage to give you some ointment and food, but I can't save you. However, in a few days, my elder brother should be able to send the old pervert Qin Zhong to the imperial prison. Hang on a little longer, and things will improve." He finally spoke, uttering a faint, soft hum. Before leaving, fearing he might be bullied to death, I gave him all the silver on my person and pressed a dagger into his hand. "Keep this knife. If that old eunuch bastard torments you again, use it to defend yourself if necessary. Once you're out, if you face trouble, send word or come directly to the general's residence to find me. My name is Xiaolin Lang. Remember that?" He clenched the dagger tightly, his voice faint. I remember." Later, my brother kept his word. Within days, he sent over a dozen corrupt officials to the imperial prison. Among them was the old eunuch Qin Zhong. After completing his mission, my brother returned to the northern frontier, leaving me alone in the capital once more. I visited the Qin residence again, hoping to find that youth. Alas, all the stewards and servants had fled in the chaos, leaving only utter devastation behind. He took my dagger and vanished without a trace. Months later, the news of their deaths arrived. My father and brother had perished in battle. In a single night, I plummeted from the clouds, becoming the orphaned daughter of the Xie family. The court plunged into another round of power struggles. Then I heard of a man named Liu Yueshing. With his ruthless methods and formidable skills, he gradually caught the attention of the eldest princess. Backed by her, he took over the Eastern Factory, becoming its youngest head in history. I still remember that year. Clad in icy composure, draped in crimson brocade, he rode a towering steed through the streets. Passers-by murmured, "Did you see that? That's the new lord of the underworld of the Eastern Factory, Liu Yueshing." They say that when that old eunuch traitor Qin Zhong nearly escaped, it was Liu who intervened at the critical moment. Not only did he capture Qin Zhong, but he also slashed the old traitor over 20 times. Not just that. I heard none of those cuts were fatal. He let the old eunuch bleed to death in agony. TSK. That man is truly ruthless. Of course, anyone who serves in the Eastern Factory, especially as its chief eunuch, can't be a saint. Back then, Liu Yueshing once gazed at me through the bustling crowd. His gaze was gentle. The moment our eyes met, he paused slightly, his thin lips parting as if to speak. Alas, the clamor of the marketplace drowned him out. I caught not a word. Later, He took command of the Eastern Factory, ruling with ruthless cruelty and claiming countless lives. Rumors about him grew increasingly rampant. Gradually, I came to believe what most people did, that he was cruel and tyrannical, deceiving the world and abusing his power. At one flower viewing banquet, I even bluntly mocked him, saying his wicked deeds would bring him a miserable end. Unexpectedly, he happened to be passing by then. My words fell into his ears. Every single syllable. He did not refute me. He merely stood alone in the shadows, gazing at me, his face pale, his eyes slightly reddened. Years have passed. Recalling that first encounter on the street, when our horses met. Only now do I belatedly remember the shape of his lips as he spoke to me across the crowd. Xia Linlang. Wait for me. Blame it on my blind eyes and dull heart. Failing to recognize an old friend. I thought it was our first meeting. Little did I know. For him, it was a reunion, one he reached step by step, walking on the edge of a blade, bleeding all the way. I didn't wait for him. Trapped by an imperial decree, I married Li Huijin. For many, many years thereafter, I was confined within the palace walls, while he was imprisoned within the Eastern Factory. He grew cold and distant, addressing me only as Your Majesty the Empress with feigned humility. Yet he never once called me Lingling again. Once I understood Lu Yueshing's true identity, many mysteries from my past life suddenly made sense. For instance, in life, Lu Yueshing often sent me gifts. Ice in summer, charcoal in winter, apricot wine in autumn, peach cakes in spring. Each seemed ordinary, yet within the palace, they were hard to come by. Most palace servants played favorites. Summer ice and winter charcoal were always prioritized for the favored consorts. By the time they reached me, this long-despised puppet empress, there was scarcely anything left. Lu Huiyue always seemed to know what I lacked. Even his apricot wine and peach cakes came from the Yonghua alley outside the palace, carrying the taste I longed for most. Once, I couldn't help but ask. Superintendent Lu wields power that reaches the heavens. Why bother going to such lengths to look after a disfavored empress like me? He only replied indifferently. This superintendent merely follows the instructions of the eldest princess, offering extra care when Her Majesty the Empress is in distress. I believed his words. Because of this, I foolishly went to thank the eldest princess. That day, Lu Yueshing happened to be present. After my thanks, the princess's gaze shifted from blankness to understanding. Finally, she gave Lu Yueshing a fleeting glance before smiling in acknowledgement. Only after my death, lingering as a wandering spirit by his side, did I hear the wild, twisted confessions of his heart and suddenly understood. None of it had anything to do with the princess. The princess did not expose him, merely sparing his face. Everything, absolutely everything, was Lu Yueshing. Back then, when I fed him peach cake and saved his life, I casually mentioned Yonghua Alley. He remembered it as something I loved to eat. I remained utterly unaware of all this. And in life, I spoke without restraint, humiliating him countless times. So much so that Lu Yueshing always believed I despised him, even when he wished to give me gifts. He feared I'd find them tainted, forcing him to use the princess's name as a pretext. It turns out, during those years I lived in seclusion within the palace walls, bearing the title of empress while practicing calligraphy and painting for Li Huijin. There was another who struggled to survive in the murky swamps for my sake, loving me yet never able to have me. Alas, it was all too late. I finally understood the depth of his affection, yet I had long since become a lonely, wandering spirit. My soul lingered by Lu Yueshing's side for an entire year. I watched him seize imperial power to crush Li Huijin, drive out enemy forces, slaughtering all who had wronged me. collaborate with the eldest princess, elevating her as the new sovereign to restore the realm. On the day he resolved to assassinate Li Huijin, the capital saw its first snowfall. The princess knew his entire plan. Before his departure, she confirmed one last time. Lu Yuexing, do you understand? Even if the assassination succeeds, you will not live to see it. Lu Yuexing gently stroked the dagger in his palm, the very one I had given him in my youth. His voice was calm, light as falling snow. Then I shall not live. The princess could not bear it. I understand. You wish to avenge Ling Ling with your own hands. But do you realize that even in death, you will forever bear the shame of regicide? Your name cursed for eternity? Lu Yuexing's eyes were void of emotion. Yet a faint curve touched his lips as he rasped. Let my name be cursed for eternity, as long as it brings peace to her soul. As he spoke, he suddenly turned away, seized by violent coughing. By then, his body was already at its last gasp. To force himself to stay conscious, he had swallowed deadly potent medicine. A thread of pain rose in my heart. I had long since fallen in love with him. But I was merely a ghost, powerless to do anything. I could only watch helplessly as the once peerlessly beautiful, fiercely radiant man was consumed by injury and illness, his back bent double by coughing, his spine crushed beneath the weight. The day he slew the emperor, he seemed to have truly become the Grim Reaper. He charged into the palace with his sword, severing the head of that dog emperor, Li Huijin. Then he hacked the blood-soaked corpse to pieces. With each blow, his face remained calm and expressionless. Blood splattered his robes, staining his pallid face crimson, a sinister beauty. When the slaughter ended, he dragged Li Huijin's mangled, grotesque skeleton to feed the wild dogs. The crime of regicide utterly erased his past merits in pacifying the realm's chaos. After all was settled, Lu Yuexing came to my grave once more. Exhausted, he leaned against my tombstone, his gaunt knuckles gently tracing the dagger I had given him. Finally, he slit his own throat with it. Blood flowed steadily until it ran dry. The corners of his sorrowful eyes stained with shattered crimson. Xia Linlang, I know you despise me, but I still wish to join you. His voice raspy and strained, yet it held every ounce of tenderness he possessed. He took his own life. Now, reborn into this new life. There is still time. Lu Yuexing is not dead. He stands vividly before me. His features sharp and handsome, solitary as a cold pine. Though after rebirth, I can no longer read his thoughts. I can decipher every flicker of his expression. Right now, his entire body is taut, coldly feigning menace. Xia Linlang, the last one who treated me like a toy, I stabbed him 20 times. So, you still have time to run now. Every word was meant to scare me. But I wasn't afraid. I even leaned in closer, took his hand, and whispered into his ear. Lu Yuexing, don't underestimate me. What kind of nonsense is this about a plaything? I told you long ago, I intend to be your wife. Lu Yuexing. Lu Yuexing's breathing grew ragged, his heart pounding against his ribs. Yet his tone remained mocking, probing. Miss Linlang comes from a noble family. Are you truly willing to follow a eunuch like me? I met his gaze with a half smile, half frown. In my previous life as a ghost, I followed Lu Yuexing for a full year. Though he couldn't see me, I remained by his side every day. Later, when he lay ill and restless, he often sought medicinal baths to ease his pain. It's rather embarrassing to admit. Back then, I accidentally saw him completely naked. Eunuch or not, he insisted on testing me with veiled hints, all because he craved more sweet words from me. So I granted his wish openly. Lu Yuexing, I want to stay by your side, regardless of your status or power. Even if you were blind, Crippled, maimed, or dead, I'd still love you. Mid-sentence, I suddenly realized how unlucky those words sounded and quickly stopped. Changing my tune. Pa. 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 What's this about crippled or dead? Lu Yueshing. You'll surely live free of disaster and illness, enjoying a long life. Before I could finish, he had already pinned me against his chest, covering me with kisses. A forceful invasion. Our soft lips melted together. I inhaled the faint scent of snowwood pine from his body, nearly crushed into his scorching frame. His force was too great, jolting my tongue. I dug my nails into his waist, still unsatisfied, and bit him. Yet Lu Yueshing seemed oblivious to the pain, his voice thick with passion as he called my name. Xia Linlang. You can't escape me. His voice trembled faintly, laced with a choked sob. My heart jolted in disbelief. He was the merciless lord of the Eastern Factory. A man who killed without blinking, yet now he seemed to be crying. The next instant, as if trying to hide his momentary vulnerability, his kisses grew fiercer. Yet at the peak of our passion, he abruptly stopped. I lifted my gaze to meet his flushed eyes. Clearly unsatisfied, he held back with extreme restraint, his tone a mix of reluctance and warning. Xia Linlang. Kissing someone means you have to take responsibility. You must give me a proper status. His voice was hoarse and scorching, hauntingly seductive, tinged with a hint of grievance. As he spoke, his hand suddenly held a hair ribbon, one he must have removed from my hair at some point. He wound the ribbon around his slender fingers, twisting and twisting, twisting and twisting. Here we go again. Did he have some kind of collecting obsession? Not only did he secretly keep the dagger I gave him years ago, but last time, he'd slipped and taken my hairpin. This time, he'd even gone so far as to untie my hair ribbon. Never mind. Thinking of my past life, I chose not to dwell on it. My grand scheme remained unfinished, his marriage was yet to be decided. Either way, it wasn't the right time to sleep with him. Moonlight from the deep palace filtered through the lattice windows, casting thread-like beams upon Lu Yueshing's form. I lowered my voice, speaking to him with a hint of seduction. It's just a title, isn't it? Once we deal with that dog Emperor Li Huaijin, I'll give you anything you want. He lazily nestled his head into the crook of my neck, his breath carrying lingering desire. Fine. 3 months. I was slightly taken aback. You're so sure? The deadline he casually mentioned coincided perfectly with my own calculations. But I had been reborn. I knew within 3 months, turmoil would erupt in the imperial city. I planned to exploit that chaos. What was Lu Yueshing's scheme? He didn't explain his reasoning, only curling his thin lips into a smile. 3 months. That's enough. Xia Linlang. Don't go back on your word. From that day on, Lu Yueshing became busy. Meanwhile, that dog Emperor Li Huaijin, desperate to win back the people's hearts, concocted a new ploy. He would personally journey to the 3 disaster-stricken counties to perform sacrificial rites and pray for blessings, demonstrating heaven's imperial grace. This was the same foolish act he'd committed in his previous life. I had warned him then. Sacrificial rites were exceedingly cumbersome. As emperor, his imperial procession demanded immense resources for security, provisions, lodging, and sustenance along the entire route. Local officials were already overwhelmed with disaster relief efforts. How could they possibly spare the energy to host him? Alas, good advice falls on deaf ears. In the end, his brainless prayer ritual not only fueled greater public resentment but also allowed the Northern Rhone Kingdom to exploit the opportunity. They infiltrated the capital with spies, planting seeds for the palace turmoil to come. What made this lifetime different was that not only was Li Huaijin courting disaster again, but Qin Qingqing insisted on accompanying him. Whenever Fu Chun mentioned Shin, he couldn't help but roll his eyes. Miss. This time the emperor went to pray without bringing a single consort along, only Shin. Wasn't this blatantly backing Shin? Shin even claimed she was originally a medical attendant, going on this trip to treat the common people's illnesses and injuries. What nerve! Could her medical skills really save lives? The physicians sent by the Grand Princess had been busy for a whole month. Her going was clearly just muddying the waters to grab some fame. I sneered coldly. Indeed. After being vilified like that, Shin was bound to be seething with resentment. Given the chance to piggyback on good reputation, she'd jump at it. And Li Huaijin, well, she's using this to try and turn the court officials' opinion of her around. Shin was so full of herself she couldn't hold back. She came looking for me. Under the guise of taking leave, she flaunted and taunted. Xia Linlang, don't think I don't know, you wretched woman. You claim you don't want to be empress. But it's nothing but a ploy to play hard to get. Too bad. No matter how hard you try, it won't work. Once I return from praying with His Majesty, you'll be on your knees begging me to be empress. The moment Li Huaijin left her side, she abandoned all pretense of fragility. But when footsteps approached nearby, Shin expression shifted instantly. She curled her lips into a wicked smile. Then without warning, toppled backward, lying on the ground, her face flushed with panic, tears streaming down her cheeks. Miss Xia, why did you push me? I truly came to apologize and bid farewell. I don't understand, why do you despise me so? I'm accompanying His Majesty solely to provide medical aid to the disaster victims. If you harm me, what becomes of the suffering people in the 3 southern counties? The moment I saw her like this, I knew Li Huaijin must have arrived. Sure enough, the next instant, Li Huaijin's furious voice boomed from behind me. Xia Linlang, you wicked woman, bullying Qing again. He shielded Shin protectively behind him, his gaze toward me fierce enough to devour me. Yet I walked straight up to Shin and asked with a smile, did I push you? Miss Xia. Her eyes brimming with tears. She clung desperately to Li Huaijin's robe, looking utterly pitiful. Only I could see the unrestrained mockery in her eyes. I laughed, swiftly grabbed her, and shoved her hard into the lotus pond. By autumn, the pond's pure lotuses had long withered, their roots dried to nothing but filthy mud. Li Huaijin tried to shield her, but his movements were too slow. The guards stood frozen, only scrambling to rescue her once they snapped out of their shock. Shin thrashed desperately in the filthy mud, her shrieks piercing the air. Ah! Mud filled her mouth, even her nostrils bubbling with muddy foam. Though I appeared outwardly like a proper noble lady, they seemed to forget I was born into a general's household, raised among swords and spears. After the initial shock, Li Huaijin's face twisted with fury. Xia Linlang, with me standing right here, you dare act so viciously. I, however, merely brushed my hands off, calmly observing the scene as I informed Li Huaijin in a cool tone. If I had truly struck, would it have been a mere push that barely hurt? I would have shoved her into the mud to wallow. Just like now. Li Huaijin seemed to finally grasp something. His gaze on me grew complex. Xia Linlang, how? Have you changed? I scoffed, ignoring him, and turned to leave. He called after me reluctantly, Xia Linlang. My pace didn't falter. He stood frozen in place. It wasn't that I had changed. It was that he had never truly known me. Though I am the orphaned daughter of the Xia clan, I am no longer alone. Behind me stand my maternal clan relatives. I have preserved my father's former commanders and uncles. I have the support of court ministers. I have the Empress Dowager's approval. I have the backing of the eldest princess. And I have Lu Yueshing, 2 months of scheming since my rebirth had borne fruit. Even as emperor, Li Huaijin could no longer touch me. As expected, Li Huaijin departed the capital with Shen Qingqing for a month-long pilgrimage. Word has it that upon arriving in Nanjun, Shen Qingqing saw corpses and patients with horribly mutilated, disfigured bodies, missing limbs, broken arms, and before she could even examine anyone, she vomited herself. Li Huaijin, heartbroken for her, ordered her to rest in the imperial retreat. Yet Shen Qingqing ultimately forced herself out. But she was only a half-baked physician. Her ability to practice at all stemmed from the palace's abundant supply of precious herbs and Li Huaijin's indulgence. How could ordinary folk afford the ginseng, deer antler, monkey nuts, and seahorses in her prescriptions? The wounded couldn't use her formulas, and proper physicians found her a hindrance. She was a nuisance everywhere, and eventually, she was asked to leave. Meanwhile, Li Huaijin's ritual to pray for blessings and sacrifice to heaven involved not only slaughtering chickens and cattle but also burning incense for miles and consuming vast amounts of gold and silver. Public resentment boiled over. People argued that instead of burying and burning all that livestock and precious metals, it would be better to distribute them, enough to feed them for an entire year. After over a month of this, Li Huaijin and Shen Qingqing left the palace as grandly as they had entered, only to return in utter disarray. But that wasn't enough. The Northern Rhone spies had moved. It happened on the very day Li Huaijin, ignoring his minister's objections, insisted on holding the ceremony to crown Shen Qingqing as empress. In my past life, this was meant to be my coronation ceremony. In this life, it became Shen Qingqing's. The spies disguised themselves as slender, delicate palace maids, serving close to Li Huaijin. When he least expected it, they transformed into female assassins radiating murderous intent. In an instant, the assassins drew their blades. Guards drew their swords. The clamor of battle erupted like a surging tidal wave. Lu Yuexing nearly dispatched 2 assassins perfunctorily, biding his time to turn the tables. Still, the charade must play out. He feigned rushing to the emperor's aid. I, however, appeared alarmed, grabbing his sleeve in feigned weakness, pleading with wide eyes. Lord Lu, if you leave, what will become of me and the princess? My words seemed to please him. Knowing full well I was acting, his expression softened nonetheless, the corners of his mouth lifting. I won't leave. And so, he remained by my side. One sword stroke, one fallen assassin. Seeing the ferocity of his blade, the assassins realized they stood no chance. Abandoning their suicidal charge, they all turned their blades toward the emperor. I stood calmly beside the princess, watching the blood splatter before us. Shen Qingqing's crown had long since fallen. Dragging her heavy, ornate phoenix robe, she did as she had done countless times before. When danger struck, she hid behind Li Huaijin. Amidst the chaos, a blade slashed sharply toward Li Huaijin's chest. In my previous life, the princess had sacrificed herself for the greater good, shielding Li Huaijin from that very blade. Yet later, Li Huaijin repaid her kindness with betrayal. That scene remains etched in my memory. This time, just as the princess moved to act, I seized her sleeve with force. Your Highness, please preserve your strength, remain a spectator. Do not interfere with others' karma. Once blades are drawn, they wait for no one to in the blink of an eye. The blade had already pierced Li Huaijin's body. His Majesty has been attacked. Quick, save the emperor. Truthfully, Li Huaijin could have sidestepped slightly, at least lessening his injuries. Moreover, Shen Qingqing stood closest to him. Had she chosen to shield him, he might have escaped unscathed, and the irony was, Shen Qingqing had once showered him with words of love. Yet at the moment of life or death choice, not only did she fail to shield Li Huaijin, but when he tried to dodge, she yanked him back. Shen Qingqing had treated him as nothing more than a human shield. The moment blood gushed forth, Li Huaijin froze. A moment later, he suddenly reached out toward our direction. Linling, eldest imperial sister, you. His eyes reddened, his expression twisted in agony. Yet that agony didn't feel like the pain of a knife wound. It was more like the regret of Someone waking from a dream, suddenly remembering a grave mistake they'd made, but who cared anymore? There was no one left willing to shield him from the blade. The bitter fruit of his actions was his alone to bear. After the assassination attempt, the hall lay in utter disarray. Li Huijin was gravely wounded, though not dead. He clung to life by a thread, unable to rise from his bed. I kindly suggested to the Empress Dowager. His Majesty cherished the Empress deeply, even risking his life to protect her. She ought to tend to his illness. Thus, Qin Qingqing was sent to Li Huijin's bedside. She finally achieved her wish, replacing me as Empress. Yet when Li Huijin saw her again, his gaze darkened with fury, as if he wished to strangle her with his own hands. You vile woman! I treated you well. Yet you... Such cruelty! Qin Qingqing wept with feigned innocence. At the time, in the chaos, blades have no eyes. I meant no harm. But Li Huijin no longer believed her. A dying man. He found strength from somewhere, violently slamming her head against the table corner. Once. Then again. Qin Qingqing wept and begged for mercy. Yet blood still poured from her wounds. One blow missed its mark, shattering her eye clean out. Li Huijin finally collapsed onto the bed, gasping for breath. He issued an edict: should he pass away, Qin Qingqing must be buried alive with him. In that instant, Qin Qingqing felt all life drain from her. Finally, clinging to his last breath, Li Huijin said he wished to see me. When I arrived, he lay weakly propped up in bed, clutching a pair of dragon and phoenix jade pendants. They were the tokens given during the late emperor's betrothal decree. One dragon, one phoenix, Li Huijin and I, each with one piece. Later, when he sought to marry Qin Qingqing, the late emperor's decree was annulled. I casually tossed my piece to him. The moment Li Huijin saw me, his eyes reddened. Lin Lang, I finally remember. In my past life, you were my empress. But even in death, he had regained memories of his former existence. A wave of nausea washed over me. If my death in the past life was unjust, leaving me with unresolved attachments that drove my rebirth to seek fulfillment, then what right did Li Huijin have? He wasn't even worthy of repentance. I coldly interrupted him, sneering. Your current empress is Qin Qingqing. I should congratulate you, your wish fulfilled. This life not lived in vain. I couldn't be bothered to waste words on him. After speaking, I turned to leave. But he struggled, tumbling off the bed and crawling toward me, grabbing my sleeve. Lin Lang, I was wrong. I was wrong in both this life and the last. If there is a next life, I will never betray you again. Stay. Look at me. Please? I was utterly exasperated. Just then, Lu Yueshing arrived. He stepped beside me, yanked me into his embrace, and looked down at Li Huijin, sprawled pitifully on the floor, his gaze dripping with scorn. You? Worthy of a next life with her? The moment Li Huijin saw Lu Yueshing, it was as if he'd encountered a demon. His eyes flashed with terror, laced with fury. Don't come near me. Don't come near. You castrated traitor. Are you plotting rebellion? Lu Yueshing furrowed his brow. Why does that sound so familiar? As if I've heard it somewhere before. I silently scoffed. He's not just heard it. He's even killed for it. Lu Yueshing's gaze was as cold as ice. A mere casual glance. Li Huijin recoiled like a startled bird. Finding it tedious, I reached out and lazily hooked Lu Yueshing's little finger. Let's go. That palace. That man. There was nothing left to see. Winter had arrived. The eldest princess began attending court as regent. Li Huijin struggled for less than 10 days before dying. Qin Qingqing was dragged away to be buried alive, suffocated to death in a stone coffin. I recall the imperial physician had clearly stated Li Huijin could have lingered on for another half-year. Now he died. Far too quickly. I watched Lu Yueshing standing quietly beneath the eaves, seemingly admiring the snow with casual indifference. Needless to say, it must be the work of that madman again. Has Lord Lu grown impatient? I propped my chin on my hand, asking him with mocking amusement. He turned to look at me. Those once gloomy eyes had gradually softened, though the madness still lingered deep within. His tongue remained as sharp as ever. He died too slowly. It was an eyesore. Truthfully, Lu Yueshing always harbored a desire to cut Li Huijin down. But this thought, he couldn't pinpoint its origin, much less voice it aloud. He could only try to conceal that dark, twisted impulse. I looked at Lu Yueshing with a half-smile. An eyesore? So you just killed him? He paused slightly, standing there, crimson robes against white snow. Like a dream, like a painting. When he spoke again, his voice was rough, laced with cautious flattery. If you dislike it, I'll try not to kill anymore. I laughed instead, leaning close to his ear to whisper each word. Lu Yueshing, I told you long ago, no matter what you look like, I'll always love you. Love is one thing, but proposing marriage? I couldn't very well do it myself. So I waited for Lu Yueshing to make the arrangements. Yet after that day, he vanished without a trace. The winter stretched on interminably. Nearly a month passed without me seeing Lu Yueshing. I even sent men to the eastern factory several times. But he was nowhere to be found. Finally, I couldn't resist inquiring with the princess. Your Highness, might you know what Inspector Lu has been occupied with lately? The princess shot me a playful glance before answering with a slow smile. Ah, he's not in the capital. He's gone to Beirong. I sprang to my feet, my expression shifting instantly. What? The princess nodded. Yes. Lu Yueshing said that since Beirong can plant spies within our great Liang, he can do the same in reverse. So he's gone to make secret arrangements. He claims this mission will eliminate any lingering threats to our great Liang's throne. Once the matter is settled, he wishes to request a favor from me. My mind went blank. I could not forget. In my previous life, it was in Beirong that he was wounded. Upon returning to the capital and learning of my death, grief overwhelmed him, causing him to cough up blood and trigger his heart ailment. After that, he had only a year left to live. But this couldn't be right. Lu Yueshing's mission to Beirong was supposed to occur 7 years later, when Beirong city fell and the princess was forced into exile. It absolutely should not be this year. I murmured. Did Lu Yueshing mention what favor he seeks? The princess smiled. His beloved is a young lady from a distinguished family. But he comes from the eastern factory, forever branded as a lackey and a eunuch. He feared he'd bring shame upon her. So he specifically asked me to grant him a respectable official post upon his triumphant return. Oh, I haven't told you yet, the truth is, Lu Yueshing is not a true eunuch. I only appointed him as a seal keeper to handle matters for me because I saw his ruthless cruelty. It kept those eastern factory scoundrels in line. Come to think of it, he's loved that girl for years now. To be worthy of her, he's been climbing the ranks with all his might. In a daze, I recalled Lu Yueshing's cold, distant face, and his words, each one spoken with restrained, suppressed emotion. Miss Lingling has a habit of captivating hearts, only to turn away without a second thought. You know perfectly well who I truly wish to embrace. You must give me a proper status. Xiao Lingling, don't break your promise. Lost in these thoughts, my eyes grew wet. That madman, Lu Yueshing. He went to Beirong, where danger lurked at every turn. I dared not even send him a letter, fearing it might alert the enemy and endanger him. My heart grew restless. Reborn into this life, I'd been striving to break free from fate, no longer believing in predestined paths of life and death. But after Liu Yuesheng left, I prayed to nearly every deity in the capital, all to pray for his safety. In those agonizing days that dragged on like years, I witnessed the regent princess ascend the throne as emperor. I endured countless winter nights, through plum blossoms and falling snow. My longing for him consumed me. Finally, as the snow began to melt yet lingered, I received news of Liu Yuesheng's return to the capital. He had succeeded. For at least 30 years, Great Liang would know no more war. He became the great hero who pacified the land. From now on, all would revere him, fear him. Never again would there be those voices of humiliation and contempt. Yet everyone was saying he had suffered severe injuries. I spurred my horse forward, holding back tears, racing toward his residence, then instinctively charging toward his bedroom. Though in this life it was my first time entering his home. In my previous life, I had lingered here as a spirit for an entire year, thus every flower and blade of grass here was intimately familiar to me. Though Liu Yuesheng held the seal of the Eastern Factory, his guard was ever present due to the secrets he concealed. His residence housed scarcely any servants. Only a mute servant attended to his needs. I slipped effortlessly through his door. Liu Yuesheng, how are you? In that instant that he leaned against the bed, his robes half open, pale and startled. Lin Lang, how did you? Before he could finish, his brow furrowed as a cough seized him, staining his thin lips crimsoned. I couldn't hold back any longer, my eyes instantly reddening with heartache. Liu Yuesheng, do you think you're immortal or something? Why didn't you tell me when you left? The mute servant was carefully changing his bandages. The bandages lay in layers upon layers, yet they were still soaked through with blood, right at the spot over his heart. In my past life, even when I jumped to my death from the city walls, I never shed a single tear, but he managed to make me cry. He looked flustered and helpless, quickly wiping the blood from his lips before rising to soothe me. It's just external wounds, they'll heal with time. It only looks scary. I shook my head, my voice still trembling. Really? Then why is everyone saying you're about to die? Liu Yuesheng weakly tugged at the corner of his mouth, letting out a helpless chuckle. Just rumors. Nothing but gossip. Didn't you once say I'd die a miserable death too? I choked. This madman truly holds grudges. He extended a fingertip, gently twirling a strand of my hair. His gaze was both adoring and tinged with a hint of pitiful longing. Xia Lin Lang, you still haven't given me the status I desire. How could I bear to die? I lowered my eyes to the horrifying bloodstain on his chest, digging my fingernails painfully into my palm. Really? Not die? But in my past life, he was wounded here too. And he didn't live past the next year. Seeing I wasn't easily appeased, Liu Yuesheng sighed softly and admitted, all right. It is dangerous. But when that sword thrust toward me, fragments suddenly flashed before my eyes. As if I'd experienced this in a past life. Because of that split-second thought, though I bore heavy wounds, I avoided the vital points. It might leave some lingering ailments later, but it's nothing serious. There are always medicines to treat it. I see. Hearing him say that, I finally believed him. Still, thinking about how he'd inevitably have to live with medicines from now on, I couldn't help but feel a pang of sorrow. At that moment, the Empress's edict arrived. 3 consecutive decrees of reward. First, Liu Yuesheng was enfeoffed as Marquis of Pingjiang, with a fief of 1,000 households. Second, for my service in supporting the Dragon Throne, and in recognition of my father and elder brother's past merits, I was enfeoffed as a princess, granted the honorific title Rongshi, and bestowed with a fiefdom. The final decree announced a royal match. The once icy lord of the Eastern Factory, now the Marquis of Pingjiang, had become the court's most sought-after new noble. Word spread that this new marquis, barely able to walk after half a month of recuperation, immediately began arranging his grand wedding. I seized his sleeve, personally setting up the bridal chamber and banquet. On the wedding day, spring snow melted as birds chirped in competition. By the red candles of the wedding night, I saw a scroll of paintings beside Liu Yuesheng's pillow. It was the very painting I had made for him in the palace long ago. The one I had jokingly told him to take home and sleep with. Beside his bed lay a wooden box. I couldn't resist opening it quietly. only to find all sorts of familiar objects inside. A gem-encrusted dagger, hairpins, handkerchiefs, sachets, jade plaques, hair ribbons. Every single one belonged to me. Some I didn't even know when they had fallen into his hands. I ran my fingers over each object. I imagined Liu Yueshing caressing them countless times in the past. When he entered the door wearing his wedding robes, my heart pounded like a drum. After sharing wine and sharing bed, his discarded wedding robe and the hem of my skirt lay in tangled layers, intertwined. I bit his earlobe, my breath warm and sweet, teasing him playfully. Liu Yueshing, did you truly sleep clutching the scroll in your arms? He curved his lips in a low chuckle, gently cradling my waist. Then he used the silk ribbon to bind me, coil after coil, until finally, he tied my hand to his. His voice was hoarse, the corners of his eyes tinged with desire. Lin Lang, call me husband. Moonlight first ascended, spring blossoms heavy with dew. The love of a past life, the wish of this present one, all dissolved into a single soft, tender whisper upon this pillow. Husband. The end.